Good afternoon. I'm Julia Everett, Head Librarian at the Cecil B Learning Resources Center, for those of you that don't know me. And on behalf of the college, I want to welcome you to this webinar, which will focus on the founding of the institution that is now known as Northeast Alabama Community College. Mr. Blake Wilhelm, Learning Resources Archivist, will be leading the presentation. The presentation draws on research and notes from Mr. Harry Campbell, who was a local businessman and a member of the Alabama Board of Trustees for junior colleges. If you have questions, please type them in the chat box, and I'll be collecting those for Blake at the end of the presentation, or feel free to ask questions yourself at the end of the presentation. And I see that Dr. Campbell is in attendance this morning, or this afternoon for the meeting. And Dr. Campbell, would you like to say a few words before we begin the presentation?
I will say that I'm certainly glad y'all are doing this. It's a good presentation. And contrary to what some of y'all may think, I wasn't around at this time when the college was founded. So I'll be learning things myself. I've heard a lot of stories about it through the years, but didn't have firsthand experience with it. And that is a very good thing to do.
Thank you. Blake, we'll hand it over to you.
Okay, so the presentation is on the founding of what is now Northeast Alabama Community College. It's not a comprehensive history of the college. It just leads up to sort of the political maneuvering and some of the hard work that people put in the years preceding the establishment of the college, which construction was finished and classes started in 1965. But the presentation is the heart of the presentation is it came from the Harry Campbell papers. Harry Campbell was a business person in a section, and he was very influential in this area and very influential in getting the college here at this site. Several years ago, Dr. David Campbell, brought me several folders of papers that Harry Campbell had collected over the years and that Dr. Campbell had, and we put those in the archives here. And one of the interesting parts of, as I went through those papers, was it was like a presentation that he had given on how college was founded and the lead up to it. And I worked along with that, incorporated some other resources and some other things out of his papers, just to kind of give an idea of how Northeast came to be at this location and this site. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. Again, it's Harry Campbell's recount of the establishment largely. It pulls from that and some newspaper sources. But after reading through these papers, looking over the presentation that Harry Campbell put together, there are a few key points that I pulled away after researching. Number one was a belief among community members in education as the key to improving local communities. On the individual level, it's still the same things that we believe in here today. On the individual level, on the workforce level, in small business folks, there was a real buy-in from all strata of the community, and also the second point was there was overwhelming demonstrated local support at all levels. There were people donating, relatively small amounts of money that. In the early years of the college for the reception. I'll show you some resources related to that that'll show you how I came to that conclusion. The third key point in the founding of Northeast was leadership and persistence. You'll see that it was a difficult endeavor to get the college established here at this location, and I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I don't know where that's coming from, but I'm distracted. A little bit of an echo. But the fourth point was the establishment of Northeast was the first joint undertaking of a major project by Jackson and DeKalb counties. The two counties working together on a major project. I thought that was interesting. There's certainly been a lot of that cooperation in the years after. As we talk about how Northeast got here at this site, one of my favorite primary sources from the Harry Campbell papers was a telegram from Governor John Patterson from 1961. So we take it all the way back to 61. We know classes started here in 65, but Governor Patterson wanted a college on Sand Mountain, and he had expressed that after talking with people here and understanding that there was a desire to have that. And he appointed Harry Campbell, a member of the Board of Trustees for junior colleges, for a junior college to be established in Jackson or DeKalb County. So that was one of the first commitments. Also, we'll talk about a little bit later in 61, while Patterson was governor, there was a piece of legislation passed that the state legislature said that they had a desire to put a college on Sand Mountain, but they didn't fund it. Later in 63, that's what we'll talk about coming up. They actually funded the idea. But, so that's 61 when Patterson is governor. Patterson is governor through 62. And in 1962, there was a governor's race between John Patterson and George Wallace. I think I said yesterday, it's one of those things that haunts you when you're a history person. I think I said that the first time Wallace ran for governor was 62. He ran in 58, but the first time that he won, he ends up beating Patterson in 62. But this is May of 62. Well, of course, the race was in the primary was just a few months away. The Democratic primary was the de facto race in those days, with the state being predominantly Democratic. But he writes to Harry Campbell. These were in the Harry Campbell papers. This document was as well. I pledge my administration will take whatever measures are necessary to correct deficiencies in the present system of education in Alabama and prepare a foundation for an educational system of unequaled excellence. I am definitely for a junior college being built on Sand Mountain. We will have full school terms, and we will have tuition-free schools. We will have more school buildings and better pay for teachers. So there's Wallace going on paper, on record to Harry Campbell with his intention for there to be a junior college on Sand Mountain. So in 1963, Wallace is elected in the 62, takes office in January of 63. And in 1963, the Alabama legislature passes the Alabama Junior College and Trade School Authority Act of 1963. And they fund this with it is not just a unfunded mandate. It is it has a means of funding the project, at least in part, with a 2-cent beer tax passed aid in that. The State Board of Education would be in charge of the system, meaning Wallace's administration would locate and name the colleges and select the college presidents. The system incorporated already established 2-year colleges and trade schools and sought to build new ones across the state. So that is the big key there for our location and our site here is there wasn't already a college campus. Sneed, for example, had been a Methodist seminary, so that there was already sort of, some buildings, I don't know what state of repair they were in, but places like Marion Military and Sneed and several others already had buildings and something of a campus. But we were in the running for some of these colleges that were to be built during this era. And I included the law here. I'm not going to read all this to you or ask you to read it, but I thought it was in Harry Campbell's papers. He had a copy of it, and it's a 10-page law, relatively short law, but had a huge impact on the state of Alabama. This is seen, of course, we know Wallace for a lot of reasons, some not so great, but one of the positive things that he did, and I think everybody here agrees, and even outside our realm, there are a lot of people that talk about what a great job he did in establishing the 2-year college system. Importantly, we're going to step back in time for a minute. That's 63. Back in 1961, as I said earlier, there was a local bill put through the legislature that to establish a junior college on Sand Mountain. So that's when Patterson was governor. We saw Patterson, the telegram he sent to Harry Campbell. He was an advocate for this side as well, especially with the election coming up that next year. But there was no funding, however, set up. But trustees were named, and Harry Campbell, as going back to that telegram, was named chairman of the board. but importantly, it was passed without funding, without a means of funding the project. But it is an important step. So we're back to 1963. So after the establishment of the 1963 Act, legislators and interested groups around the state began competing for colleges or trade schools in their area. Same way we think about any kind of major project, whether it's a governmental funded project or it's an auto manufacturing plant. You see municipalities and different regions try to compete, right? Sell their site as the best location, and it was not a foregone conclusion. Although there was the legislation from '61 and the letter from Wallace, it was not a foregone conclusion that there would be a college here, and there was a lot of work that went into the process. One of the organizations that had a big hand in it was the Sand Mountain Booster Club, a civic organization representing most of the communities north of Albertville. The first time we gave a variation, I've added to and taken away and changed a few things, but we gave a variation of this presentation in 2014. And Dr. Burke was here, and he was in the presentation. He said his dad had a Sand Mountain Booster Club car tag, and I thought that was really cool. I would love to have one of those for the archives. If anybody knows where we can find one, there's an organization that their name comes up a lot when you look at this area in those years, and they did a lot of good work on Sand Mountain. It was concluded that a location on the DeKalb-Jackson County line on Highway 35 between Scottsboro and Fort Payne would satisfy both counties and be an ideal location. This is important in reading a lot of people's thoughts on this and a lot of the things in Harry Campbell's papers. It's if Fort Payne had pushed too hard for the college to be there, or Scottsboro had pushed too hard for the college to be there, or Stevenson or Bridgeport or Valley Head or Collinsville, or other communities, it may not have happened. But because the two counties were able to, it's commutable, certainly easily commutable now, and even then from Fort Payne and Scottsboro, and they could combine the political powers of those two areas. Get a lot of buy-in from folks on Sand Mountain, not having to drive on and off the mountain, and it just seemed like the ideal location, and that's what they concluded. I included a few clippings that were in the Harry Campbell papers that dealt with the establishment of the college. This is from a meeting at Cooper's Restaurant in Fort Payne that they had. It's got some of the leaders in the establishment of this site. Cecil Word over on the left, Dr. Everett, and I know that name. He's the namesake of the Learning Resources Center here, and did a lot for education and other facets of community life in Jackson and DeKalb counties. Bill Beck, Fort Payne attorney, member. He was also a member of the State Board of Education. Also another name that's prominent in this period in time in this region. State Senator Kenneth Hammonds of Valley Head, and State Representative Lloyd Campbell of Scottsboro. I'm sorry, I missed one there. State Senator Clayton Carter of Gunnersville. And that brings, I've talked a lot about Jackson and DeKalb counties, but Senator Carter was from Gunnersville. There, in addition to Jackson and DeKalb counties, this college was set up to serve part of Cherokee County and part of Marshall County. There was a lot of buy-in from those areas as well that you see in looking at the documents, and those it's very commutable for those areas as well, and they were excited about it too, and advocated and bought into the idea. This is a picture of I'll just read the caption to you here. Elmer R. Bailey of Rainsville points to the future location of the proposed DeKalb-Jackson Junior College. So I want you to think about that picture, and then I want you to think about, if you're old enough, I was here that time about 20 years ago, and then I want you to think about what that looks like today. Made some progress until about 2001 or so, and then it's made a heck of a lot of progress since then as well. But that's the initial campus right there with the county line sign. So all available help in both counties was enlisted in support of was established in nearby parts of Marshall and Cherokee counties. I said major goal was to be sure that both counties are pulling together in the same direction. Talked a little bit about that. We talked about that meeting at Cooper's Restaurant in Fort Payne. The date of that was August 31st, 1963. The meeting, as we said, included legislators, Board of Revenue, leaders in education, representatives from the Sand Mountain Booster Club. There were about 30 people there. I don't think I mentioned that earlier, but they set up some committees. A coordinating committee was composed of Harry Campbell, who's the chairman of Jackson County, Gene War of Jackson County, W.A. Israel of DeKalb County, who was also the superintendent over there, and Abe Hendricks of DeKalb County. Visitation committees were also established to speak with decision makers involved in the process. These visitation committees traveled to the people that were on this. The state established a committee to decide where these new junior colleges would be built across the state. And these visitation committees, what they did is travel to those folks to the region where they live, the place where they live, and gave a presentation on behalf of our site. We had honed in on the Jackson-DeKalb County line site, and now it was time to sell it to the decision makers. Just another article here that kind of talks about that. A lot of what where I pulled some of this information from a local newspaper. So you can imagine if you're trying to sell this idea to the decision makers, how important is it to go into that meeting and being able to say that I've got 60 acres of land to build this college. I've got an option to buy. If you sign off on this, I've got a commitment from 30 acres in Jackson County, 30 acres mostly in DeKalb County, and we can build a college here. We not only do we have the site picked out, but we've got the people that own the land committed to working with us. So an option to purchase 30 acres in Jackson County was acquired from Mr. and Mrs. Claude Dilbeck. The Dilbecks were very interested in having a junior college here. Mrs. Allie Heyman gave the committee an option also to purchase 30 acres, mostly in DeKalb County. Mrs. Heyman had several children who could attend the college and stated that she considered it a blessing for her family. So again, people were excited. This was an exciting project. People saw this. It's this exciting, hopeful time in America in the post-war years, and a lot of people were really excited about what higher education could do for a community. And then, we've seen what it has done for this area in a lot of positive ways since then. The meeting, I'm sorry, that's from the last slide. I meant to take that out. Put the date in here. I'm not going to read this to you either, but I thought it was interesting just to look at from a primary sources perspective, just to see what it looked like. You see a lot of names listed on here that are, excuse me, a lot of names that, we have students come through, staff, faculty, some of our family names on here that are very familiar to us in this area. There's Notary Public. I mentioned to Brenda, that's some of her family. Our Homer Stringer is the guy that signed off as Notary Public on it. So what's the next step? They've established the site that they wanted. They've got all this political weight and all this commitment from Jackson County, DeKalb County, part of Marshall County, part of Cherokee County for this specific spot. They've got an option to purchase land on each side. I think symbolically it was probably good to have land in each county as well. You think of it as folks in Jackson County say, well, that's college in Jackson County. Folks in DeKalb County say, well, that's our college in DeKalb County. So both is a really good decision, I think, to look at it from that perspective. But a map was secured. They needed data to support this as well. They've got the options to buy the land at the specific site they picked out, but they need data to say, hey, we can support a college here. And they did that with a map that was secured from the State Board of Education, thanks to Mr. Delbert Hicks of Jackson County. He was working with the State Board of Education at the time and had access to, how many high school graduates there are in this potential service area, and just lots of different pieces of information. But And the map revealed a school population based on a radius of 40 miles from the proposed site. It's kind of funny to think about today. One of the big marketing pushes for the site committee was to get a brochure printed. I guess that seems kind of funny today, but they went to Chattanooga. They found a Chattanooga firm. There was a lot of talk about, the other sites and what nice brochures they had, and it was a big deal to have something printed that really touted our region for this college. So the Chattanooga firm was enlisted to print a brochure depicting all the advantages of our area as a site for a college. The brochure detailed advantages such as the availability of students, legislative support, available utilities. You got to have power, water, things like that. It would be such a good job of, today doing things like high-speed internet and all the things that we've done to make our college viable and ahead of the curve. But that was important in those days too, in different ways. Other details regarding the preferability of this particular chosen site. Here's a part of the map. Neat little map of most of the Sand Mountain here. The star there where the campus is. It lists a 30-mile radius. There were 1,433 high school graduates, and a 40-mile radius, 3,253. And I don't know how recent that was. I guess that may have been in 1 year. The total population of the four counties, they used the total of the four counties, 142, 419. We're talking 1962 here. It mentions the groundwork is laid. There's a little section there where it touts the fact that the Alabama State Legislature passed a bill that said it would like to see a college on Sand Mountain in 1961. We talked about the unfunded bill. It talks about the utilities, Sand Mountain Electrical Cooperative, water from the Sand Mountain Water Authority, telephone service from the Farmers Telephone Cooperative. They've been a good partner for Northeast for a long time. Natural gas by the DeKalb Cherokee Gas District. The town's Rainsville section will provide fire and police protection, being only 3.5 miles from the proposed site. There's some interesting. This is another note from the brochure. I thought was interesting. Northeast Alabama is the fastest growing area in the state, with Huntsville, the miraculous Rocket City, in our midst, and the fact that we are the highest populated rural area in the country. No one could doubt our urgent need for institutional growth on the college level. I thought those were interesting statistics. I'd like to know how they came about that. I'm not doubting their conclusion. I just would be interested. I didn't see any data for the highest populated rural area in the country in 1962. It's interesting. And also they talk about Huntsville a little bit here. Of course, Huntsville's at the height of the space race. This is a fast-growing area, but they're really careful in, and I thought this was a wise decision too. They're really careful in their data not to include the Huntsville area because they don't want to try to sell. It's not really it's a tough commute in 1962 from Huntsville to where we are, number one. But and they have other higher education opportunities there, but they don't want to feel like they're pulling statistics from that really high density growing area. So they use, Jackson County, DeKalb County, some parts of Marshall and Cherokee County as well in their data, and they're careful to make sure the legislator knows this is not a Huntsville. We're not trying to bump our numbers up by pulling from that area, that metro area. So who is on the State Board of Education committee for recommending junior college locations? They have a committee for this. The chairman of the committee is B.A. Forrester, who is an assistant superintendent of education. He's, of course, in Montgomery with that position. The visitation committee members that we talked about from the local site committee met with members of the selection committee and the State Board of Education. They traveled across the state and sort of took their tour on the road and met with these folks and made their case. One visitation committee was composed of Lloyd Campbell, of course, state legislator at this time and later a judge in Jackson County, Hugh Stewart, Jackson County Board of Education, D. Donald Word, Welton Norwood, people that were, their names come up again and again in this period in time in our community over in Jackson County that did a lot of work there. Another group composed of Harry Campbell, Everett Abels, and Roy Buford made trips to Jacksonville, Montgomery, Troy, Andalusia, and Camden. This is, again, to speak with the decision makers in this process, the people that are on the State Board of Education and the people that are on this selection committee. So making their case, right? And this is just, again, some primary sources that Harry Campbell had made this list of the State Committee on Junior Colleges, and you see, like, so they went to Troy. They were probably visiting Roscoe D. Kelly there in Troy, and they went to Jacksonville. They were probably visiting Dr. Theron Montgomery there. He's got a building name for him at JSU now, so that gives you an idea of some of these trips and who they were talking to. There's an AP article that Harry Campbell clipped and included about the educators determining the location of these junior colleges. So they're meeting with folks and making their decision. So brochures were mailed promoting the Jackson DeKalb site. Local government and civic leaders from both counties wrote letters to people who had authority in locating colleges. I say both counties there, but there were some from, I remember seeing some from Marshall County. I know I didn't include this in the sources here, but there was one, there's so many, there were dozens of, there's one from the Gunnersville Lions Club. I know, so that's one from Marshall County, and I can't remember one from Cherokee County, but there could have been. But a few of them: the DeKalb County Board of Education, Scottsboro Superintendent of Scottsboro City Schools, Fort Payne Board of Education, DeKalb County Commission, Jackson County Board of Education, Jackson County Board of Revenue, and the Sand Mountain Boosters Club. There are a few of these. This is the one from W.A. Israel, who was. We talked about him being involved in this project. He's also the superintendent of the DeKalb County schools. There's one from Thurston Nelson, the Scottsboro City Superintendent, Abe Hendricks, Fort Payne City's president of the DeKalb County Commission. I'm sorry, City Board of Education there, John R. Stewart, Fort Payne, Jackson County Board of Education, Jackson County Board of Revenue. Hugh Stewart was the chairman of that. Sand Mountain Boosters Club. There's some folks there, some names there, folks that were involved with that. So initially, when Mr. Forrester's site selection committee made its recommendations, our site was not included as a site for the first junior colleges. Now, I tried to find more information about this. This is obviously a big. We've led all the way up to this, but I couldn't find a whole lot of information about that. But immediately, the people involved with the committee contacted Governor Wallace and reminded him of that letter that you saw on his campaign letterhead that he promised a college on Sand Mountain to Harry Campbell. He publicly told the people of the section in Rainsville in campaigning. I found several sources for that there would be a college on Sand Mountain. And they reminded him of that, and immediately Wallace added our site, or the Jackson DeKalb County site where we are today, to the list of colleges to be built. And just I added a couple of things here. These are from 1965, but they're also in Harry Campbell's papers. And I thought they were indicative of how much the community wanted this college here. The Wholesome Bakers of Chattanooga Depot in Rainsville. This is for the 1965 reception opening to college. And there were calls for donations in the community, and they gave $25. This is one of my favorite pieces in the collection from the Roadtown Club. And Mrs. J.C. Walker of the Roadtown Club wrote to Miss Ovell Benefield, who I believe was the secretary of the college at the time. It's due to the rush of the harvest season. The few ladies who met at our club meeting Monday afternoon agreed that it would be better to send $5 to help buy refreshments for the reception at the new college Sunday afternoon. I hope this meets with your approval. Well, that was indicative. This is a rural community in 1965. And I thought it shows you the buy-in from folks that, harvest time affected their schedules. And they were bought into the idea of this college to the point of sending, a small donation for refreshments at the reception, the opening of college. But that's sort of the path that the papers took me through and researching that. And there's some people here who probably know a lot more about this than I do. And if you have any ideas or thoughts or things I may have gotten wrong, certainly that's always possible. But I'd love to hear those. Largely pulled from the Harry Campbell collection. Dr. Campbell several years ago also brought me a presentation from Dustin Smith, which was an overview of 2-year college history. And I pulled some of the information from that as well. Some local newspapers, and I double checked a few things in some Wallace biographies and some things like that. But does anybody have any questions at this point?
No, I don't. If no one has any other questions, Blake, it was a really good presentation, and I appreciate everyone coming. And your support's important to us, and we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.